today. This is the last visit on a week-long trip that I've been on. Started in Albuquerque last week and visited the council of chapters here in Oklahoma, and then up to wherever I was yesterday, Tulsa, Green Country, and then down here this morning. So I've seen a lot of your state, and I've been impressed. I've enjoyed my time here an awful lot. Hope to come back. I didn't nearly get down the entire list of things that I wanted to do here, but the best part, this is the best part of my job. When I came to MOAA and I was engagement, I worked, that was in on our transition team, and I worked with those service members who were leaving the military and going to their first career as a civilian. And that was really interesting work. I got to travel around the country, mostly visiting installations and working with the active duty folks at a very exciting time in their lives. And I did that for about a year before the opportunity came to move over to the councils and chapters. And I jumped at that chance. It seemed like an exciting place to work. There's always something new, and it really supports the heart of our association, if you will. A couple of numbers are 350,000 MOAA members, which helps us very much on Capitol Hill. We love all of our members because every number that we bring up there to Capitol Hill is power and persuasion in our advocacy business, which of course is the heart of our business. Of those 350,000 members in MOAA, any idea how many belong to chapters? Any guesses?
40,000.
Did you get the cheat sheet? Okay, yes.
I read the magazine.
Bingo. Somewhere I'll have a prize for you at the end. Oh, excellent. Yes, we put that in our magazine for October. I'm glad to know that you read the Chapters and Councils edition. That's our exciting issue every year. We've tried to actually put more in all of the other months too and expose those 310,000 members who aren't members of chapters. That's the real idea of putting that stuff out there. We know you all like to see your names and faces in print, but it's for those other 310,000 members to say, you know, why aren't you in the chapter? There are so many good things about being in a chapter. But you know, the honest to God truth is, in any organization, you all know this, no matter how many people you have, about 10% of the people are energized and actually doing the work. And that is true for us as well. Those 40,000 chapter members, including yourselves, are the most active, engaged members that MOAA has. And we support our chapters. Of our 84 member staff, we have 5 of us who support councils and chapters. It's a big job. I didn't quite understand that when I got into this job. It is very busy. It's so rewarding. But the reason we have 5 people on that team supporting chapters, we should have more, but the reason we have these people supporting chapters is because MOAA needs chapters. Chapters do 3 things for us. 1, you are the face of MOAA out here in Oklahoma. There are lots of people who haven't heard of MOAA, and I'm sure even fewer would have heard of MOAA if it weren't for the chapters out there kind of raising the MOAA flag, showing and raising the brand, that kind of thing. So thank you for doing that. That brings us members that we add to that 350,000 number to give us more influence. And then secondly, impactful community service. We clearly can't do that much community service beyond our little area of Alexandria, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. I hope that you all know that we've done a couple of things recently. So scholarships, we have given out $8 million to 1,300 students across the country. It's either grants or loans in our scholarship program, so please keep that program in mind if you have children or grandchildren getting ready to go to college. And it's not just limited to our members or even to officers. It's any veteran and their child who's going to school can apply for that amount of scholarship. And chapters, in addition, have given out $500,000 in scholarships across the country to deserving students. So together, between MOAA and the national and the chapters, we've really helped helped a lot of children get to school who might not otherwise have been able to do that. We also do what we call the Community Outreach Chapter Grant. I don't know if this chapter has taken advantage of that in the past.
We applied for and received one for our Military Welcome Center at the Lawton Airport.
Oh, terrific. So you can apply for that every year. We give out about, it depends on how much we get in for that every year, but it's usually about $85,000. Last year we awarded $5,000 grants to about 24 different projects across the country. And those basically are any community project. It has to fit within 9 categories, but those 9 categories are pretty broad. Pretty much anything that assists veterans in the community is going to qualify for those grants. So again, together, this partnership, we're able to impact a lot of veterans throughout the United States. And one of the things that we did at the start of the pandemic, which is really novel for us, MOAA National had never given money directly to veterans. We were giving it to chapters to help with projects, etc., but never directly to individuals. And at the beginning of the pandemic, we have a new vice president, young, enthusiastic woman who's come up through MOAA. She actually started in the transition center where I did, and she's now the VP of development. And at the beginning, she said, you know, we need to do something for the people who are affected by COVID, whether it's medical bills or whether it's, you know, tangentially they lost a job or somebody in their family lost a job and they need help to pay their electric bill or their mortgage or whatever. And she said, well, we'll have a goal. We're going to raise $25,000 for this fund. And we had a very generous MOAA donor who said, I'll tell you what, if you raise $25,000, I'll match it. And guess what? 24 hours later, we had $50,000. So within a day, MOAA responded, our members responded and funded that. And we've now, we continued to take donations for that, and we have collected over $200,000 that have been given out in $500 increments to needy veterans who have been affected by COVID. That was so successful. Now that, thankfully, the demand for those grants has gone down, but our board is now talking about converting that into a enduring relief fund where we will continue to do that kind of giving to veterans around the country for whatever they might need. So that's a pretty cool thing that we've done. And we actually, the COVID fund, if you weren't aware of it, we administered that primarily through the chapters. We said, you know, chapter members, if you know people in your community who have been impacted by COVID, it was a super simple application process, and the money was, you know, in the person's hands within a couple of days. But the chapters were really central. The chapter members were very central to identifying and helping those folks apply for those loans. So thank you for that. So that was 2 things that chapters do for MOAA. And the third really goes to our main mission, advocacy. In addition to all the numbers behind going to Capitol Hill, we also need the grassroots advocacy. MOAA focuses, as you know, on the national legislative agenda. We don't have the resources to look within the states. I know Oklahoma is a pretty good place to live in terms of exemptions from retirement pay, for income tax, and that kind of thing. Some states aren't so good, and our members are really central to getting those laws changed, or at least bringing some awareness to those laws which impact military members and veterans. In addition to the local and state advocacy, we also rely a lot on the relationships that are formed at the local level. It really helps us when we are representing somebody who votes in a particular district. You know, we vote in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. You all vote here, and so you are the best advocate for what is happening in the United States for your elected officials. So all of those pull-out cards from our magazine, the calls to action that I hope you see and respond to that come to you in email. Every single one of those things helps us. And on a more personal level, the relationships help. We have gotten access to particular officials in Congress because they have already had a relationship with someone locally. We have folks in states who have been working the legislative agenda for quite a while and have a first name basis relationship with their congressman. And that really, really helps us when we go to Capitol Hill. Is everybody aware of what we used to call storming the Hill? Okay, we don't call it that anymore. That's not in vogue any longer. Now we call it advocacy in action, but it is our annual campaign. The last 2 years have been virtual. We take members of chapters, coordinated usually through the councils, bring them into DC, and we literally stormed the Hill. We went to 535 offices in one day. It's an exhausting day, but if you ever have the opportunity to travel to DC and do that, I highly recommend it. It's just such an amazing experience to be there with all of those MOAA members and just go and hitting every single office, back and forth usually across Capitol Hill in an entire day. This year it's at the end of April. We are planning at this point to do that in person. We're still waiting to see. We're cautiously optimistic, I guess, that we're going to be able to do it. We think COVID will be far enough behind us that we'll be able to do it, but the problem is security on Capitol Hill is still very, very tight, and so we may not get our members there, but we're really hopeful to do that. But I wanted to say, with that campaign, I hope that most of you were aware of the widow's tax, which was the SBP DIC offset. Essentially, widows were losing about $12,000 a year because the offset from two different benefits. And MOAA went to the Hill on that and pressed the Hill on that for decades. And we finally won that issue 2 years ago, in 2019, when we went to the Hill. And I'll tell you what the difference was. We'd always brought members with us when we do that. We usually have a staff member and then 1 or 2 members from the congressional districts that go with us on these visits. But that particular year, we tried to make sure that every team that went to Capitol Hill had a surviving spouse on that team. And that made a real difference, because every year it's a pretty easy issue to say, yeah, that makes sense, that's an injustice, we should fix that. And they said that every year, but every year the follow-on was, but we can't, how are we going to pay for this? Because it was a very expensive thing to change. But it's very hard when you've got a widow who's standing there saying, this has impacted me, to say, well, we can't afford it. So that made all the difference in the world. So that's our members, that's our chapter members that really help us do that. So transitioning into that just a little bit in terms of what we've been doing on the legislative side, of that staff of 84 I talked about, we have 10 lobbyists who work very hard on your behalf. They have a legislative agenda every year. The last National Defense Authorization Act that we had was in 2021. It wasn't as dramatic, I guess, as the widow's tax, but we were able to put on pause a couple of DOD actions. One was merging the commissaries in the exchanges. Wanted to make sure that that was studied before any kind of decision was made, so we were able to halt that, and we were able to halt the military treatment facility restructuring, which was also seemed to not have been really looked at in terms of its impact on veterans. So we were able to halt that. In addition, no increases to BAH or that doesn't make sense. No increases to TRICARE, and I think no reductions to BAH. In addition, Agent Orange coverage was expanded to include a couple more presumptive illnesses, and that was something that we also advocated for. We will continue, we continue to look at those issues going forward. We are currently in the process of determining our legislative agenda for 2022. You probably are aware that we're currently in a continuing resolution. And so the NDAA has not yet been passed. It has passed the House, and it is pending approval by the Senate. But a couple of key things this year when we did our advocacy in action, every year we focus on 3 particular issues. So this year we looked at a TRICARE young adult provision, which was to assist those youngsters, those military youngsters who age out of TRICARE. You know, they have a TRICARE young adult policy, which actually is rather expensive and doesn't provide as much coverage as a lot of civilian insurances. So we tried to get that looked at so that there would be a better, a more competitive replacement for TRICARE for those young adults. And unfortunately, that didn't make it into either of the bills. The second one that we stormed on was a food parity issue. Applies primarily to younger enlisted folks. Most states, as you know, have a ceiling for income in terms of who qualifies for food stamps. Well, we have the young enlisted folks who have maybe larger families and don't make enough money to feed their families, but because their benefits like BAH and BAS are considered, they're above that rate, that ceiling for food stamps. And so we were trying to get a subsidy for that in place. That does appear in the House bill, but not the Senate bill. So we could see that one come out of Congress. And the one that has, I think the final issue that we stormed on has gotten the most steam, and that is a toxic exposure bill, which takes what I talked about there with Agent Orange and expands the VA coverage to the post 9/11 veterans, to veterans of more recent conflicts such as the burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan, to look at providing medical coverage for those folks. And that's in both bills. So we're very hopeful that that will get passed. So some pretty good stuff that's been happening the last couple of years for us, and we'll continue to advocate for you going forward. Transitioning to, what do I want to talk about next? What we do, I guess, what my team does, everything my team does on a daily basis is to ensure that our chapters are effective. And in 2022, we're going to do a program that we're calling ICE, increasing chapter effectiveness, because we know that we need our chapters to do the 3 things I talked about at the beginning. It's nice when a chapter can get together and have a lunch or a dinner, but for MOAA, we need them to be effective to be able to do those things. And a large part of that, as I know you're all probably more than aware, is ensuring that our chapters are healthy and that they'll be healthy into the future. So recruiting, retention, those are big things for us to focus on. We put a couple of programs in place in the last couple of months to ensure that we can share that you all can share best practices with other chapters across the country. We do training events, travel around 4 or 5 times a year to get to the different regions to train our leaders. We've done some roundtables where we can, the pandemic actually had some good results, and one of those was we were able to leverage technology, or it made us think about ways to leverage technology in a way that we never had before. So we've gotten our chapter members, anybody who's interested, you don't have to be in a leadership position, once a month, the last Thursday of every month, just to talk about one particular issue, whether it's ROTC or it's recruiting. This month we're going to talk about those community outreach grants, because that window opens on the 1st of December. But any way that we can keep our members connected, that has been a big focus of ours. It always has been, but I think during the pandemic it became a lot more clear that that's a part of our job too, is making sure that our members, our most active and engaged members, are connected with us and connected with each other. So that brings me really to what can you do. My small call to action would be stay connected. Stay connected with one another, stay connected with us at headquarters, because we can only support you as much as we know you need support and where you need support, so we'd appreciate that. When you do great stuff out there in the community, send us the information, send us photos, send us a little line about what you did, and we have a dedicated, actually in addition to our 5 people, we have a dedicated news editor who will come out and do stories. I think she did one on Ted Janosko at Ted in Maryland. So that was either, I can't remember if it was in the magazine or not, but it was definitely in the electronic newsletter. Does everybody in here, how many of you get the MOAA Officer magazine every month? Yay! You know what that means? That means you are all paid members, so thank you for your membership. If you don't receive it and you're a paid member, let me know, because that's one of the most valuable benefits of membership that our members tell us. For our non-paid members, we actually do have a third class of membership. It's called basic membership, that is strictly an electronic membership. Those members do not receive the MOAA, the Military Officer magazine, but they receive our electronic newsletter. How many of you receive the electronic newsletter, an email from us about once a week? That is a great way to stay engaged with what's happening on the advocacy side, with what's happening on the chapters and council side. It comes out once a week. You can actually adjust it and choose the topics you want to hear about, choose the frequency at which you receive it. So if you want that news from MOAA, it is completely free and part of your membership. You can either go to MOAA.org and look at your profile and change that, or you can call 1-800-234-MOAA and they will change it for you. Our member service representatives are standing by to take your calls, and they'll be very happy to do that for you. So that's one, stay connected. 2 is please be innovative in your recruiting methods. The last 2 years have been a challenge for all of us. Military and veteran service organizations, even before COVID, were a little bit on the decline, an aging population, and in order to ensure our viability into the future, we really need to be looking at bringing in new people. So we'll talk with the officers after lunch here and talk about some of the resources that might be able to assist you. But I'd love to just, to implore all of you to, that was like my emphasis. Everybody knows somebody who is qualified for MOAA membership. You probably know multiple people who are qualified for MOAA membership. I would challenge you to bring them to the next meeting, that person to the next meeting, and just be innovative. I was thinking about, I should have been focusing on the prayer, but when we did the prayer at the beginning, we do have 4 virtual chapters that I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of. We have one for nurses, one for surviving spouses, one for the public health service officers, and one for chaplains. That's our newest virtual chapter. And those are actually interesting recruiting resources for folks. You can bring people into a virtual chapter who may not even be aware that there's a geographic chapter out there. And the virtual chapters can meet, that's an opportunity for people to meet if they're unable to make it to a meeting. I love, by the way, that you all record, not that I really enjoy being recorded, but I love that you record your meetings so that your members who can't be here can stay connected. So kudos for that, and for all of you who make it out to the meetings and make an attempt to keep that esprit de corps alive and doing that. And then finally, the grassroots advocacy. Please do tear out those cards from the magazines, answer the calls to action, every number, every letter, every phone call that goes up to Capitol Hill supporting our agenda helps us and helps you and other veterans around the country. So thank you for that. And I guess the bottom line is never stop serving. That's our mission. And we'll never stop serving you, and we appreciate that you never stop serving those that our association represents. So thank you for that. And do I have any Marines in the room? No Marines. Well, it's the Marine Corps birthday. I think they're 246 today, so happy birthday, Marine Corps. And I hope you all have a very memorable and meaningful Veterans Day tomorrow. And if I have a minute or two, I can certainly take questions. If there were any. None? All right, well, I'll be here until you let me leave, so I'm happy to answer anything.